Welcome to another episode of Liberty Dad Podcast. Sunday nights is my series on what is happening in the Libertarian Party. This series is dedicated to discussing what state and local affiliates are up to. The goal is to spread the word about the hard work that is happening in the party and give other affiliates ideas. Joining me tonight, again, is my co-host, Susan Hogarth. Tonight, we have a couple of guests to discuss the important issues in their affiliates. Before bringing them on, let's get Susan in here and start the show. Susan, how are you?
Fantastic. I hope you are.
I'm doing okay. I am here in Disney World. I always get it confused. I think it's Disney World. You would think that living in Florida, I would know, but no, that is not the case. So, folks, by the way, like I said, I am in Disney, so I'm in Orlando, not in Jacksonville. This is not my normal setup, so things are a little different, and you might see some delays or some awkwardness, and just kind of give me some patience with that. So tonight,
Really appreciate you taking vacation time. I hope your wife doesn't hate all of us right now.
So funny enough, and I like to joke that my wife is Asian, and she kind of embodies that Asian stereotype. And I like to joke that she works from 9 to 9, which is kind of true. She's actually here on business for real estate. So, so she quite understands the idea of working even when it's mixed with pleasure. So it's not really a big deal. So we're in good shape here. And it's funny because she is actually going to attend a concert tonight for somebody named Toby Mac, which people may or may not have heard of. And I have, because I grew up with him. And I'm going to make a little bit of fun of her while she's not present to hear about it. But for the last week, she's been like, hey, Alexa, will you play Toby Mac so she could catch up and be prepared? So, because she grew up in Indonesia, so she did not necessarily hear some of the same culture and music and whatnot that I did.
I have to confess to fairly complete ignorance of Toby Mac myself.
If you weren't an evangelical in the 90s, then you probably don't know who he is. But if you were,
should not have heard that line while I was drinking hot liquid. No, I was not, but yes.
But so I'm familiar with who it is, and she's catching up, and she's actually with some friends right now, so she's not even by herself or necessarily with my son or our son. So we're all in good shape here to have discussions tonight. So with all that being said, folks, I do want to point out that tonight's going to be a little bit more on the rough side because I don't have my normal setup, and because I was busy getting prepared for coming down to Disney. So I was not as diligent as I would have liked to have been about getting, figuring out who's doing what in the Liberty community. But the show must go on, and we do have some things that are happening. So I'm going to kind of rely on Susan tonight to kind of help drive this, because I believe the guests that we have tonight and the things we have to talk about are primarily coming from you.
Yeah, and we're very fortunate. Two very exciting, one starting off bad, but I think it will end well for libertarians. Things are happening. And the one is participatory budgeting that we wanted to talk to with Cara Schulz about in Minnesota. And then the other is the ridiculous acts of the governor of New Mexico, and how libertarians are reacting to it.
Right. And I think we're going to do that in the reverse order, correct?
Correct.
All right. So tonight we have Chris Luchini from the New Mexico Party. He is going to be discussing what it is that libertarians are up to regarding this issue. So just to give you a very brief, we'll let Chris kind of give out the full details, but many of you may have heard that the governor of New Mexico suspended the Second Amendment right to, I believe, open carry for 30 days. So let's go ahead and bring Chris on so he can give us the real details of exactly what's happening and what they're doing about it. All right, Chris,
Hey,
how
Chris.
are you?
Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Perfectly.
Good. So let me clarify a few things. I am now an activist. I have no position whatsoever in the Libertarian Party of New Mexico, other than as somebody who knows where bodies are buried and how to get things done, hopefully. So the governor's order is much more than just about open carry. She has suspended open and concealed carry in the county of Bernalillo, which includes Albuquerque, and on all state property throughout the state.
Oh.
Wow.
Which is
in New Mexico is half the state, the half that the federal government doesn't own.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's mostly federal, but anyway, there are some other provisions that are in there, most of which are meaningless, but one of which is really interesting, which is creates a order to inspect all firearms dealers once a month by the State Licensing and Regulation Bureau, which, by the way, has no authority over firearms retailers. Never has. There's not a single word in statute or regulation that gives them this power. There are over 9,000 federal firearms licensees in the state of New Mexico. They're going to have to spend tens of thousands of hours per month to do these inspections, which is ludicrous that they're not actually going to do them. This is all theater. So you can ask questions. I can just tell you what we've done. You tell me how you want to run this.
Yeah, go ahead. And you said something about a demonstration, or?
Right. So when I heard about this, I've been moving hay, which I refer to as hateful Tetris. Anyway, so as soon as I got done with that and I heard about this, I started reaching out to all the activists that I knew, trying to get the full details of what was actually going on. And I arranged for a whole bunch of us to go down and get arrested at 3:30 yesterday. The Albuquerque Police Department said, we want to have nothing to do with this. We will not be enforcing any aspect of this order. The Bernalillo Sheriff Carves Department issued a statement, which is a gigantic pile of mush. But when you parse it down, they will also not be enforcing this order. This left the state police. And another activist who is with another group reached out to them to arrange a demonstration arrest surrender situation, right? The police know how this works. You have a demonstration. Everybody wants to get arrested. Let's do this in a civilized fashion. Right? So you call ahead of time. You tell them when you're going to be there, so forth and so on. The response was that they're not going to arrest anybody. They're going to issue a civil citation. And if they see a group out in front of the state police headquarters, they are not going to come outside to issue those citations. They want nothing to do with it. So in addition, we were trying to get the TV stations to come. We didn't have any success in contacting them other than peripherally. And their response was, we're covering something else of more importance at that time. It may actually have been a scheduling conflict. I don't know. But we weren't going to get video. We weren't going to get we weren't going to get the state police to come out and actually, issue us citations. So we decided to essentially defer that until Monday afternoon. There are at least 2 temporary restraining orders that have been filed. One by Gun Owners of America, and give me a second, I can't remember the exact wording of the other organization. They're both gun rights organizations. I believe there's a third one that is in the works. Lawyers may be able to tell me why we have multiple different entities all filing their own independent temporary restraining order filings, and why they didn't consolidate them, or if the court will consolidate them. Not a lawyer. Don't know why this transpired this way, but those have already been filed. They will be heard, I am told, first thing Monday morning. Now, if you want to get into the nitty gritty of the details of real politics, we have 11 federal judges. These cases are assigned randomly. 6 of those judges are Democrats. 5 are Republican. 4 of those 5 Republicans are, by the analysis of people that I trust, very likely to issue an instantaneous temporary restraining order. And one of the Republicans is a fascist authoritarian that defers to executive power at all times. So essentially you have 4 out of 11 chances that we're going to get an instantaneous TRO first thing Monday. There are a whole bunch of people trying to organize protests at the same time. There's at least 3 different locations that I know of. I'm hoping that later today that they will have consolidated that down to a single location so that everybody can go to the same place. So that you're just simply going to have to stay tuned on Facebook and Twitter, et cetera, or sorry, X, whatever they're calling it now. So that's about where I'm at on this. I think we're probably looking, if the TRO does not go into effect, I expect several hundred people. If it does go into effect, I suspect it will be significantly less than that. The other thing is, if it doesn't go into, if the TRO goes into effect and this whole thing is suspended, then I think you're much more likely to see a much larger organized demonstration at the Capitol in Santa Fe this upcoming Friday. So again, circumstances, actions are going to dictate the response there. There are already calls for, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
That's good. So for those of you that think that restraining order is weak sauce, and I agree, there are already calls for impeachment, which unfortunately are full of partisan rhetoric. The interesting part is there were some comments that were made that were then disavowed. You didn't hear me correctly, by some Democrats also in the off-cuff manner, supporting impeachment. These are one state legislator and a state senator. And after listening to the audio, I can't tell what they said, so I have no idea. It is affecting, the response to this is remarkably less partisan than I would have thought. And so
that's what I was going to say. I feel like there's a lot of people on the left who are really angry at her.
Very, for things like rank stupidity. When you say during your press conference that my oath of office isn't absolute, that when she was asked about, this is a civil infraction issue, right? And some reporter asked her, well, if I have a concealed carry permit, I'm walking down the street in Albuquerque, I'm not going to get arrested, am I? And she says, well, I certainly hope so. It's like, it's not an arrestable. I mean, your order doesn't have that power. Right. She has essentially admitted that this is virtue signaling, that this is some kind of, she doesn't expect it to affect criminals. That's part of I encourage everybody to go find the press conference and listen to it. Doesn't expect that it's actually going to affect criminals. She wants to send a message to ordinary people they shouldn't have firearms. It doesn't apply to her armed security or any other police officer or government worker. But if you're a government worker, you can still be armed as long as your employer is the right entity. The thing that got a lot of people on the left was when she said her oath of office is irrelevant, or isn't absolute, right? And that tripped a lot of triggers. There's a lot of comparisons being made within Democratic circles that she's basically a Trump. She's Trump, in a dress. So doesn't care about the law, just cares about, making a name for herself, getting some publicity. She's certainly gotten that. I'm not sure if she likes the tenor of it. So
let me ask, one of the things that I saw on Twitter, and I get it, Twitter's not real life. But there's some interesting things that you see on Twitter. And one of the things I saw, David Hogg, very notable advocate against virtually anything to do with guns. He came out and even he said, hey, this is too far. And that surprised a lot of people. So my question is is there a similar sentiment from people on the left that's widespread in Arizona right now? Or I'm sorry, New Mexico right now.
So let me say what I think the characterization is. It isn't that this is too far. This isn't you went to 101% when you should have stopped at 99 or 100. The people on the left see this as a quantum distinction difference. She says, I'm suspending the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, or bear arms in public, right? In direct violation of case law that's out there. Acknowledges that it's unconstitutional. And it's not an incremental disapproval. It's a completely different beast here. She's done something that people on the left see as terrifying. And I don't know, some Republican congressman apparently said this. I don't know if it's the crazy lady in Colorado, but what if a Republican governor decides to go out and cancel the 14th Amendment and deny women the right to vote due to a health emergency right before the election? Because of course, women tend to vote Democratic, which is insane. But it's also insane to go in and say, we're just simply going to, I acknowledge this, what I'm doing is unconstitutional. I'm going to do this for 30 days. Stop me, was essentially what she has done. So yeah, I think there is a snap realization about how dangerous this is on the left. The people on the left realize that if she gets away with this, every single time an authoritarian tool is invented, the other side picks it up and wields it with even more wild abandon. So yeah, I think they recognize how dangerous this is.
Okay, that's fair, because one of the, for me, I looked at it and I was kind of shocked, because I'm like, this sounds exactly like what you've been asking for. And then now that you I don't want to say gotten it, but for lack of better terms, now that you've gotten it, all of a sudden you're shying away from it. So would this then, you think, be a case of like that whole Overton window being shifted, but from the left side, where somebody went crazy, they went way too far over here. I can't really do it, but they went way too far, and then nobody accepts it. But hey, the next time when it's not as crazy, people are going to be like, well, that's not so bad, because in the back of their mind, it's going to be less worse than what they've heard just recently.
I think there's a risk of having an effect like that. The thing about the Overton window is, if you go way too far out of it, it doesn't actually shift it. It may in fact shift it in the other direction. And I actually am, I share some things with Susan. I'm a Pollyanna. I like to think things are going to be really good in the future and things are going to get better. But I honestly would hope, and I think there's some evidence that this will actually shift things in the other direction. There are already calls among Democrats, and those are the only ones that matter in the state. The state is a one-party state run by Democrats. Republicans, at best, are the peanut gallery. They just don't matter. But to essentially amend or revoke the Public Health Act. Is there an echo?
Yeah, there is. I think we're having a bit of a challenge here.
I think we're having a bit of a challenge here.
Sorry. Have you guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
And it's better. Whatever you did, stop the echo.
Yeah. My
Right.
apologies. Have you? Not that I need a big civics lesson, but apparently I do. Me and other people. Has anything like this been done? I mean, this seems like it has to have been done, like by Lincoln or somebody at least.
So let me. This Public Health Act is just ripe for abuse. Basically, there's a Section Z that says, here's all the things you can do under the Public Health Act to, make things better, and all the powers that are given. And the last one is, in anything else you can think of, right? It's just this catch-all, literally any activity. And this falls under Section Z. This is the same governor, I will remind you. And I'm going to try to be very calm about this, but this makes me incredibly angry. So please forgive me if I get a little bit emotional. This is the same governor that, back when COVID started, sent the National Guard under state control with loaded M16s to quarantine the city of Gallup. She sent armed people to stop everyone trying to go into Gallup on Friday through Sunday of a particular day. Gallup is where the Dene people, the people from the Navajo Nation.
I was going to say, having lived in New Mexico, why would anyone? But okay.
Go to Gallup. You go to Gallup because the water on the Navajo Nation is poisonous. And there's trust me when I say there's an entire rant about how cubic miles of federal and state government money have gone to the water system for the Navajo Nation. It's all been stolen, and etc. So people to this day, they go to town, they fill up water carriers in the back of their pickup so they can have water that isn't poisonous to drink. The state assistance checks, federal assistance checks, payments from the Navajo Nation went out to people on a Thursday. And so they were like, okay, everybody's going to hit town on Friday. The mayor and the ex-mayor of Gallup both petitioned the governor to quarantine the city of Gallup to prevent all those people from coming to town. And she complied, and she prevented people from coming to town for reasons that are flatly 100% racist. And so she's used this extraordinary power before. When I was chair at the time, I wrote letters to every news organization you could find. Nobody would cover this. You can look it up, Google it up, the Gallup quarantine. So she has successfully abused this power in the past, and her Overton window for using it clearly had shifted to where she thought this was acceptable. I'm hoping there's a snapback. I'm hoping people see that having this legislation is incredibly dangerous and it needs to be removed. It needs to be, the entire act needs to be rewritten or eliminated, which would be preferable. That won't happen. But at least the worst aspects of it need to be removed.
So on the note of pushback, what's your feeling there in New Mexico as far as getting that proper pushback, considering that she hadn't had it in the past, and now this is that it feels to me like it's that moment where if you don't push back now, that emboldens the authoritarians to go further the next time. And I mean, who knows where that goes?
Yeah, and there is pushback. Obviously, there's 3 or 4 lawsuits being filed already in the federal court system. I'm trying to organize a filing in the state court system, which is a sure loser, by the way. There's 100% Democratic judges, state judges. There are no non-Democratic judges in the state. But to make the argument that she's essentially inventing new regulation, inventing statute, and abusing the power and authority of the legislature by doing so, right? So we hope to get some legislators to join on this lawsuit, which is the only hope we may actually have to get it through, on this new regulation she has for gun dealers, right? The other stuff would be, it's also, there's literally no provision under state law for her to cancel, suspend, conceal carry permits. She's making shit up, and it's not the rule of law. So there is going to be pushback. Even if there is a TRO issued very early in the day on Monday, I fully expect to see a significant number of people protesting. Obviously, if there's a TRO, nobody's going to get cited. The state party, the State Libertarian Party, lpnm.us, has established a link for donations for a legal defense fund. If you are cited or have been cited for a violation of the firearms portion of the governor's public health order, contact us and we will contribute to your legal defense to fight against that citation. And I can hopefully, maybe this is a visual medium, not text, but I guess I could try to give you the link here.
You've muted yourself, but I think that we have the link.
Okay. Yeah. Somebody can. Yeah. If you can pop it up. I think the 2 of you are now muted, and I'm the only one talking. So
no, I'm here. But DL, you've muted yourself.
You know, this is what happens.
I'm so sorry. This is all my fault.
Right? No, it's fine. I'm out of my element, so I apologize, folks. Normally I would not be this dysfunctional, but today I am. So we will just deal with it and move on. So the link is the one that you sent me earlier for the Libertarian Party of New Mexico. Is that correct, Susan? Okay, so we'll go ahead and put that up on the screen right about now, right there. Okay, so we have the
Yes.
Libertarian Party of New Mexico. This is a link here. You can go to lpnm.us, and I imagine that there's going to be a link, but I will put the link in the show notes here. It's the New Mexico Open and Concealed Carry Legal Defense Fund. The donations will be used for legal defenses of those affected by the governor's public health order on open or concealed carry and for legal action against the order. So that's what we've got there, folks. Let me pull this. Let's see here. So, and I will put that in the show notes for anybody that needs it. For now, I will bring us back. Okay, that's not the view that I wanted. Okay, there we go. So, apologize for that.
I will definitely keep you guys up to date. I've got Susan's information, and we had a temporary crisis where the website was offline until earlier today. But that's all fixed. We're going to be putting stuff out in social media, letting people know what the status is. Since this happened so quickly, a lot of the people that are activists that are trying to fight against this, we're still trying to consolidate and coordinate and have a unified message and unified planning for events and so forth. And that's tough right now because just trying to simply get everybody to coordinate.
Well, to interrupt really quick, that reminds me to ask, are you coordinating with Republicans at all?
Not as okay. I have no position with the state party. I'm a guy who's an activist in this area. I have reached out to individual Republicans. I'm not coordinating with the state Republican Party. So people who happen to be Republican who support us on this issue, absolutely. There are some groups that exist to fight these kinds of things that are predominantly Republican. There's also some that are not. So, Benakis, I'm coordinating with everybody that I can work with that's not insane. And anytime you have this kind of situation, you always get the lunatics. Okay, that's just the way it is. But so far, honestly, the people have been very that I've worked with are being very judicious about what they do. They're being very intelligent about what they're trying to accomplish in terms of the activities that go on. This other guy who went and called the state police said, okay, we want to have it arranged for a mass arrest. Just make sure you have enough officers, et cetera, et cetera. That was a really good thing for them to do as early as he did it. And then to find out essentially through the back door that they're simply not going to enforce it. They're going to try everything they can to run away from this issue. And that is heartening to see that the state apparatus isn't willing to support this order. When every law enforcement agency in the state will not support this order, that tells you something.
Yeah, I don't think, well, I was going to say, I don't think I've ever said this, but actually I probably have. It's a shame about you not getting arrested. I
really tried. I really did try.
And we
that may be a first for
effort.
this show to wish somebody would get arrested. But the second best idea obviously is that enough pushback happens without needing to get arrested, and it seems like there's pushback from the citizens. It seems like there's pushback from internally, if you will, with the state. So I think that's always a good thing. A house divided against itself is not one that can stand very well. So I can always appreciate that. So, and if you get arrested, we'll definitely need to have you back on as a criminal so that we can talk about, what it was like getting arrested to support the Second Amendment and, fighting against tyranny of the state in, as this clearly is.
Yeah. And I like to interject one more time. This is not just about Second Amendment. This is utter lawlessness.
Right.
This is fourth world junta level bullshit where you have a ruler that just makes some crap up. And that's where we're at. And if the establishment, David Hogg, I think it shocked everybody when he came out with that tweet, but I think he does recognize that this is the abrogation of the rule of law. And, I don't know if all of us here are anarchists. I know I am one.
Sorry, guys.
I'd love to see a a society that with rules but without rulers, but we're not there yet. But when he recognizes that this is nuts and this abrogates the civilized standards that we have for the rule of law, I think that's it's a heartening sign that there is such a thing as going way too far. And I'm hoping that there's some snapback in that Overton window that takes pieces of legislation like this and removes them, because they're incredibly dangerous. It gives cover to tyrants when you can say it's for the children, it's for public health. That stuff needs to be stricken from the books. And it needs to not just not be on the books, it needs to be a social stigma for attempting to use it. I would love to see her impeached, truly. I will do everything I can to try to get some help on the Democratic side of the aisle to actually seriously consider articles of impeachment, because this behavior has to have consequences. And you're muted.
You're muted. But thank you so much, Chris. You're still muted.
There it goes.
There it goes.
Goodness. Turns out getting out of your element is a bit of a challenge. So I apologize again, folks. May have to do that a couple of times tonight. Chris, I thank you so much for coming on and discussing and letting us know what's going on the ground, because unfortunately for many of us who are not in New Mexico, a lot of what we're getting is just what we're seeing on the internet. And you know how that goes. The information may be good or it may be bad, all over the place.
Well, thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Let's make a point to follow up and see how this went.
Definitely.
All right.
I'll be in touch.
Well, awesome. Thank you again, sir.
So you will now get the balance restored, because you'll get another non-anarchist on, and you won't have to feel outnumbered.
That's okay. I don't mind. I've been around plenty of anarchists, and I'm used to being a little bit outnumbered, and it's okay. I've just kind of.
I like the way Chris said it. I envision a society with rules, but no rulers.
Right.
I thought that was beautiful.
And here's the fun part. So I tell people that I am a minarchist, and for anybody that's listening who is not familiar with all this mumbo jumbo terms, minarchist is basically somebody that says, you know what, I'd like a government that's like itty bitty bitty, right? And the anarchists are like zero, none at all. And the way I look at it, I say, hey, if we get to the point where we have this itty bitty little government and the anarchist society is within sight, I'll give it a go. Like, let's see what happens. So I'm kind of sympathetic in a sense. I'm just not quite there. That's all. So as far as our next guest, so we're going to be talking about participatory budgeting. It's a term I've never even heard of. And that's a good thing, because we need to find out what kind of things are possible within our own cities. That's the point of the show, folks, is to hear what's going on in different affiliates, whether it's the state level or whether it's a local level. And then we can talk to those people, or maybe just present what's going on. Depends on, the nature of the event or things. So sometimes we'll have a guest, sometimes we won't. But the idea is that we spread these ideas so that everybody can hear about them, and then we can learn and build a stronger foundation so that the Libertarian Party or the members or the activists, all of us combined, can make a better society. So let's go ahead and bring on our next guest, is Cara Schulz, and hopefully I got the name entirely correct. And Cara, how are you?
Good. How are you all doing?
Very well. And you are a city council member for, is it Burnsville?
Correct. Yes. Burnsville, Minnesota.
Burnsville, Minnesota. Minnesota.
You
And so first and foremost, tell me how difficult or easy it was to get elected in the first place. Because I'm going to assume that you were an elected Libertarian. In other words, it was a partisan election. You had an L by your name. Is that correct?
So it is a nonpartisan election,
Fair
but
enough.
absolutely everyone knew I was a Libertarian, because anytime my name is mentioned, they say Libertarian.
Gotcha.
They don't say it for anyone else. They don't say their party affiliation. Just me.
Fair enough. All right. Awesome. So you've got this thing called participatory I'm having a little trouble with the word here. Participatory budgeting.
Yes.
So tell us what it is, and then you're going to tell us also how you got it going,
Sure.
and you know, all the things about it. So let's hear it.
Sure. So participatory budgeting, it's kind of an umbrella term for a concept, and it can be implemented in a bunch of different ways. But the concept is that instead of having elected officials solely in charge of the budget and deciding how the budget goes, you have residents be directly responsible for how dollars are spent. And it can be done in like a myriad of different ways. They can be given a department, such as, okay, the Parks Department, and residents will caucus and they will decide directly how that budget goes. How much is taxed, how much is spent, where it's spent, how it's spent, like the whole business. So it is a very, very direct method instead of, you know, having this where you elect officials and then it's just in their hands and no one has any other say. So it is a way to give power back to residents. Now, yes, taxation is theft. Does it eliminate theft? No, it does not. But while you're getting thefted, you at least get a reach around, if you know what I mean.
So let me ask you, to what extent is this power? Now, here in Jacksonville, my understanding is we have something called the True Commission. And I think True stands for something. I do not recall it at the moment. But basically, it's where I believe the mayor appoints a number of people to this commission. And what they do is they review the budget and then what they, or just financial things, and then they will send in their recommendations. I believe that there's no actual power, so they can't veto. They don't have any kind of strength, so they could just be like, "Hey, you shouldn't spend money on this," and then the city council and the mayor could be like, "Yeah, that was nice to hear, but too bad." Is that the same thing, or is there more?
No.
Are there more teeth?
No.
Is there more teeth?
So when you do participatory budgeting, first of all, you want a much, much wider participation rate. This is not a citizens commission. Like, that's not what you're looking at. You are looking at participation across your city. You are often looking at also involving people, like, say, they're business owners. They may not live in your city, but they have their business in your city. So you want to have them involved too. You may have youth involved as well. So, like, you are looking to get it as broad as possible. You are also looking to shift as much power directly to them as possible as well. So this is way past a citizens commission. Now in Minnesota, we do have statutorily that anything that happens with the budget, the city council does have to take a vote to approve. So that is a legal thing. You just can't get around it. Is a state law. Does that mean that our citizens won't have power? Absolutely not. Like, we are building this to have wide participation and to really grant them power and for them to see immediate benefits from that power. It's been a long road to get it to this point, and it's going to be a
That's what I was going to
road
ask about.
implement.
Well, before you go into implementation, which I'm really interested in, I was going to ask, like, how much groundwork had to be laid and friends needed to be made, and how did that work?
A ton. So when you're on city council, nothing is ever just like, you can't ever just get things done quickly. And also when you're in any organization, you need to be able to work well with others, even if they're, not on your team. You have to know who the hidden power brokers are, all of those kinds of things, right? You have to know how to use your words to persuade, which libertarians should be really good at. And because that's supposed to be our forte. We don't use force, we use our words to persuade. So I started investigating this because in my city, I'm always looking for ways to shift the power balance back to residents and away from city council. And so, sometimes you have to be a crocodile in a still pool and wait for the animals to come to you and then get them, right? And other times you need to aggressively go forward and put your ideas out there. So for this particular idea, I first proposed it at a roundtable, February of 2021. And I realized, like, on my city council, I need 3 votes. I need 3 out of the 5 votes. That's what I need. And I just feeling it in the roundtable, I had 2 votes. But there was enough interest in the roundtable that they were willing to bring it to a work session, which is the next step. So then at the work session, it was a lot of discussion, and it was a very narrow advancement to even take a look at it, to even really look at it. And so what we decided is we would put it through a formal governance process, which is an entire year, step-by-step process of extra meetings. And you know how much elected officials love extra meetings. No, we don't. So we did put it through the governance session. We had to delay it a few times, and the governance session, I mean, yeah, that is a year-long process. And part of that process is that first, staff writes a white paper. Sometimes this can be perfunctory. Sometimes staff can just do an amazing job and knock it out of the park. Our staff did an incredible job. Our staff wrote a white paper that, I'm not kidding you, is this thick, and I am not kidding. They did very in-depth research on who has done this before, what's gone well, what hasn't, what's all the different ways you can do it, what are the challenges, what are the benefits. I mean, they went detailed. It was beautiful. I fully expect our staff to win state and national awards from this. It's just an incredible document. And other cities will be able to take that document for free and use it to implement in their city. So staff knocked it out of the park. And we had 30 different staff members who contributed to writing this thing. So there was high participation already on the staff side, and staff became very, very involved.
So were they enthused by the, I mean, maybe it's not proper for you to speak of that, but okay. But when you said they researched way back to see, you know, where it's been done and how successfully, what did they find out? What the TLDR?
So basically, it's usually been done by much larger cities, which is unfortunate, because this is something that is meant to get as low to the ground as possible, which is more difficult to do when you're in a larger city. So like you already have a system set up against you trying to implement this in a huge city. Doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you have to do it differently. But they did realize that the benefits were incredible. And even in places where they're like, yeah, we did it, and there's a lot of tweaks we would have to make and we would do it differently, but man, some amazing things came out of it. So even where it didn't work 100% how the city was hoping it would work, where they implemented, they were raving about the positive impacts in their city and amongst their residents. And so I think that really did open up staff's eyes to see, okay, this isn't just like something crazy and a pain in the ass. Like, this is something exciting. Like, this is something we could do in our city that would have an impact for decades. And yeah, so they got really excited about it. And when they presented that to council, and council then could see, okay, like now I can picture this and now I can see benefits of it. And then we had expert testimony, and then we had the vote on whether to advance or not advance. And the vote was 5-0 to advance.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let me ask, we had 3 candidates running here in Jacksonville. So we had 3 running for out of 19 seats. And Jacksonville's a different city, and cities differ, right? They'll have different numbers of city council members and whatnot. So my first question is, what do you believe is the biggest attraction to somebody who is not necessarily a libertarian or necessarily even libertarian minded, right? So your standard Republican, your standard Democrat, what's going to be the biggest incentive for them? Because libertarians always love, cutting costs and like really cutting costs, not like saying it and then not really doing it, but actually doing it. So what would be the incentive, for candidates that are running to say, hey, I think this would be beneficial to you, Mr. or Mrs. Republican or Democrat?
Some of the biggest benefits that can happen from participatory budgeting and, really getting your residents involved is, the case can be made on the Republican side that as residents that are more interested and involved in the budget process are going to be more watchful of every single dollar spent. And the biggest challenge is getting people involved because of the extreme apathy. When we take a vote on how much we're going to jack up people's property tax, there's not a soul in chambers because they've been trained. It doesn't matter. What they want doesn't matter. So on that side of it, it is a strong fiscal responsibility and small government argument. When you're talking to persons on the left, what is attracting them to participatory budgeting is you have the most vulnerable population are now getting their needs met and their voices actually heard, right? Instead of like this big power structure up here, and that's all that matters, you're bringing it down to here. And this is what matters. And it's about the people. And it's about people who normally would never be heard from having as much of a voice as anyone else in an extremely direct way. And we have not hammered the details out yet. We're not going to have implementation until probably late 2025, 2026. We'll be starting with a pilot program. Transformative things take a while to get implemented. How we are cautiously discussing it right now, because staff is going to come to us with some options, is we're going to be designating neighborhood zones in Burnsville, like everyone lives in a neighborhood. And we're doing that to, number one, strengthen neighborhoods and strengthen neighborhood identity and get neighbors talking to one another. But what they'll be able to do is they will be able to say, this is what we need in our neighborhood. We're writing up a proposal, and then they will put that proposal and there's grant money for their projects. And they will be able to see the fruits of what they're trying to do immediately, whether that is, okay, we don't have a sidewalk in this area and we absolutely do, or we need an addition to a park, or we need X, Y, or Z, like whatever that is, because the people in the local area, those are the experts on their neighborhood. They live there. They are there every single day, and they see what is needed, not just in the area, but by the residents who live there as well, what their particular needs are. So it's not that we're doing extra budget. It's that we're carving out a portion of the budget and giving that to our residents to do as they see fit. So that is the particular way we're looking at implementation.
Where would that come from? What part of the budget that exists now would that come from?
So that is going to be the question. Is it going to be capital fund? Is it going to be economic development? Is it going to be general? That's still up for grabs. And that's going to be part of what we're going to be figuring out during implementation, which is, okay, how are we going to do this? The other thing that we're going to be looking for is we're going to be looking pretty aggressively for private grants. My city is very aggressive on private grants. We go to private organizations and get grants for projects. When we did our food forest, that was funded by private grants. That was not public money. That was private grants.
That's awesome.
Well,
oh, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, I am an anarchist, so now I'm in between two statists. And that appeals when you talked about it as being lower level, you know, more
Yes.
Individuals determining their own futures and what happens to their money. That all sounds really good.
Mhm.
But it also sounds like you're going to have a bunch of people presenting a bunch of ideas to take money. And that sounds a little scary. So I guess I'm asking, like, from the right side, like, what safeguards would there be, you know, to minimize, to keep costs down?
Okay. So the good thing is part of that is coming from the residents on how to keep costs down, because if the costs go up, there are fewer things that can be done. So you have a natural impetus to do that. What we're also looking at is, again, can we get private grants to help fund this? This is pretty innovative. I'm feeling pretty frisky on the grants. So we're looking at that. We'll also be looking at, you know, can we have private partnerships with this as well? So those are the areas we're going to be looking at first. Then we're going to be looking at, this is our budget. We're not adding to the budget. We need to carve a section of the budget out. So the question isn't, will more money be spent? The question is, who has the power to decide how that money is spent? So that's the shift in power. Is this going to decrease taxes? No. No, it is not. It just flat out is not. That is not something that something like this will do.
There we go. Get that mute done. Okay, so you're saying that you're carving out a particular portion of the budget. So when you say carving out, are
Mhm.
you saying like, because I've not seen budgets necessarily from city council. So when you say, to me, if you say like my frame of reference is going to be like a personal budget, or maybe even a business that I own budget. Okay, so not necessarily a city council or a city budget per se. So when you say carve out, are you saying like, hey, we're gonna, the plan is to spend $1 million. And I know I'm just making up numbers
Right.
here.
Round
$1
numbers.
million, and we're gonna carve out $100 million for this participatory budgeting, and that's what the citizens are going to be directly in control of. Is that how it's going? And then they will say, we will spend this amount of money on X things, or will they, or could they say, we're not going to spend any of it?
It very well may be that you don't have enough proposals that come forward. Well, then you hold it. Just don't spend it. Like, you're not going to just blow it. Like, that's not going to happen. So yeah, you are segmenting out a portion of a budget category that is already set.
Got it.
Yeah. So this
So
is
that
more
sounds
about
like,
shifting power than it
right.
is about money. And whenever I'm looking for ways that can make a lasting impact, so budget cuts are short term.
Mhm.
They never last, and they honestly don't make an impact in your community. Shifting power lasts. Shifting how the relationship is between residents and government lasts. And so I'm looking for ways to make lasting impacts to shift power back to residents.
So that means there must be someone or groups opposed to this. If not at the, organized now, they will be, because when you talk about a power shift, it's going from somewhere. Who's against it? Yeah, well, who's against it?
So I think there were some initial questions. First of all, people have been pretty unfamiliar with it. Just like you weren't familiar with it, most people are pretty unfamiliar with it, and they're like, what the hell is this? But it is a little frightening to hand power over. And some of the questions have been, well, what if residents want to fund things that we don't want to fund, or we didn't plan to fund? And I'm like, then that means we have to shift our priorities because we're here to serve the residents. They get to set the priority. So if that happens, that's not a bad thing. That's an opportunity for us to better serve our community. But we have to trust our residents. And that is also key on this, which causes people pause. You have to have faith in your residents. You have to build trust and you have to open communication. And none of that is easy, and it can feel a little unsettling and frightening for people that are very used to a rigid top-down structure. This is an area where libertarians can shine and go forth a little more boldly and say, no, this is okay, let's do it. Like, trust fall, let's do it. Because this is where we live and breathe. And this is what we can bring to the table more than taxation is theft and all those kind of things, which I believe, I'm there with you. I've said in council chambers, taxation is theft. But these are the things when we're talking about what libertarians can bring to the table. It's this worldview. That's what we can bring to the table. And that's what's exciting. But we have to be passionate about it, thoughtful about it. And we also have to be understanding of where everyone else is and how to find out what their real concerns are and how to address them. And first, we have to build trust on our council and with our residents and with our staff. So we have so much to bring to the table. Our electeds really do. What we need to do better as a party is helping our electeds understand what their true role is. And these kinds of things, that's our true role.
So I have a
That's-
follow-up question. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Susan. I'll comment in a moment.
Okay. Well, that's inspiring. What I keep hearing in the back, because we've talked about raising people up to become not just candidates, but members of their community and engaged. And I feel like that's been lacking in American politics. Everyone sees it. And it's something you said, no one even bothers to come to the meeting because they know they'll have no effect. But if they are going to a neighborhood meeting or a community meeting and they know they'll have an effect, one, they're learning those things, and that will lead them to the city council, the state legislature, the national legislature. And two, they'll be more engaged in those decisions. So it's kind of a return. I don't want to idealize the past. There were a lot of shitty things, but more participatory. I guess that's the word. We're all going to have to learn to say that and spell it without hassle. We need a better word.
We do need a better word. It is a very wonky term.
So let me ask, does this highlight? So a moment ago, you were talking about there was a hesitancy on part of, like, say, city council members who would say, what if citizens want to fund something weird? Like, what do we do then? And you're like, well, hey, this is an opportunity for us to really be sure that we are representing the people in the way that they want to be represented. So does this highlight, or I'm trying to think of how to phrase my question. I think it does, in a sense, highlight the disconnect between, at least that I see, between authorities who get elected after they get elected and then citizens and what they thought they were getting, right? It's kind of like that joke on the internet, like, this is what you ordered, this is what you got from wish.com kind of a thing, right? Like, people wanted one thing from government and then they got something entirely different. So I guess and I'm still not sure what the question that I really want to ask exactly here is, but it's something along the line of, does this highlight it, and how can libertarians use this to their advantage, but also in a way that helps broker communication with other parties, because at the end of the day, you have to work with them. You're one person who's a
Then you're-
libertarian on your city council. Like I said a moment ago, we had 3. If they had all gotten elected, it would have been 3 out of 19 seats, which would
Right.
have been 16
Still a
other
minority.
seats. Right. Totally a minority. And that's if we had gotten 3. More than likely, the closest we got really would have been 1,
Yep.
which would have been like a really small minority.
But I'll tell you, even if you get 1, say you get 1, or say they don't get elected, but they get on a planning commission, right? A citizen commission. Can libertarians still fairly radically change their community? Absolutely. Yes, they can. But you've got to do it in a smart way. You've got to be thoughtful. You have to spend the time working with your coworkers, working with staff, working with your other electeds, and you have to build trust. And when I was first elected, I mean, there was a lot of consternation that I was going to come in and I was going to be like, well, we're disbanding the government, right? And I mean, there was a lot of consternation, and it was among staff, it was amongst other electeds. They were really unsure. Like anytime I spoke, they had this look like, I think she's going to bite someone. Is she going to bite someone? I mean, there was no trust. And so you have to build that first. But if you build that trust and you start out with small things and they understand that you have a thought behind it, you're working towards a higher community good, and that you're willing to listen to the challenges and work to address those challenges, they'll take the next step with you, and the next step, and the next step. So you do not have to have a majority. You don't. You don't even have to have like a strong minority. One person with a clear vision can make lasting impacts in their community. And sometimes you don't know you're making an impact. Like the food forest that I mentioned, that was originally a loss for me. So I pitched the idea, and for what food forests are is the outer concept is that anytime something is planted on public land, it's an edible of some type. Like instead of going to ornamentals, now you're going to edibles. And it doesn't have to be everything, but it's done that way, and anyone can harvest. You can just harvest. There's no asking permission, there's no fences, nothing. At its core, the core concept is, again, looking at changing the relationship between government and residents. And in this case, it's how we think about public land. Is it city property or is it the commons? Do we all own it in common? If we all own it in common, everyone can harvest, right? So that was the underlying concept I was going for. The food forest was the methodology I was using to achieve it. That idea got shot down. Like it was openly laughed at when I pitched it. However, there were a couple people on staff that heard the idea and it just struck with them, and they never forgot it. And they kept at it behind the scenes, and they found private grants, and we got it done. And we got it done that way. And now it's something that our city is extremely proud of. And there were questions, well, what if someone takes everything? Well, then I guess they take everything. I guess they needed it. Like, I guess they needed it. Like, let's not worry about like counting the number of berries they pick. We're not going to go there. And now that's something that our city is extremely proud of and is expanding. And, our garden clubs are excited about it, and they're doing it. They're adding on to it. So you can make a difference, but you have to know your core concepts, and then you find the methods to bring those core concepts into your city. So go for it.
I'm just super impressed because like I the wild-eyed anarchists, and I have a hard time doing the in-betweens, thinking about the in-between stuff. And my husband always has these crazy schemes for, like, what if everyone got to determine exactly where their tax dollars went? And I'm like, well, who the fuck's going to who is going to let that happen? Or, so like, let's just burn it all down. Not that I'm a burn it all down anarchist, but it's just super frustrating seeing those in betweens. And now to hear, when I was talking to my husband about your thing, he's like, that's what I've been saying. and when you talk about the food forest, that now I'm more embarrassed, because he's always said, why don't we just let the trees grow that people can eat from? We live in a semi-tropical climate. I mean, it's a little different there, and I'm like, well, that's just okay. Brilliant, apparently. So now I feel inspired to see about trying some of these things here.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you just need to find your champions, whether that's staff, whether it's other residents, whether it's a city council member, whoever that is, find someone that will help you champion your idea, and then, navigate it through. But also understand, these are lengthy processes. I was discussing things with a member in our state affiliate online. She really wants to affect a change in her city, and it's a good change. It's a small incremental change, but it's a great change. And she was getting a little frustrated because she was feeling like I was saying to her, you're on your own. Like, just do whatever. We're not going to help you. You're on your own. But what I was saying was, you as the resident, because if outside people come in, like, city councils don't like that. They hate that. Your idea is dead. But you as the resident, like, you have to find your merry band of 3 to 5 people, because I will tell you, in most cities, that's all you need is 3 to 5 people to champion an idea. And then your merry band of 3 to 5 people, you find whichever city council member or mayor or staff member who will help you champion this idea and get it pushed forward. And it's going to be a lengthy process. And yes, it's a pain in the ass. And yes, you have to keep at it. And yes, we all have busy lives, but you can do it. Like, go for it and do it. And I think some people hear that and they get kind of disheartened, and they're like, I guess I'm on my own. No, you're not on your own, but you do need to be the spark. Like, you do need to be the spark. It is work, and it's work over a sustained time. And, that's what it takes. But if you do,
you lost me at the work over sustained time.
And here's the thing, people have to understand what their personality type is. Some people are the spark that gets things going. That's their strength, right? That passionate spark. And other people, they're your grinders, slow grinder, man. They keep going, keep going. You got to find those work together. So if you're not a grinder, you're a spark, find your grinders. If you're a grinder, but you're like, oh God, I can't, find your spark, get your spark.
Awesome. So before we close off here, because I don't want to keep you too long, and I need to go and find my family wherever they are at Disneyland or Disney World. I'm sorry. Quick question for you. Since most cities don't have libertarian representation in their city council, what would be your recommendation for active affiliates to even get the ball rolling or even get the conversation started on participatory budgeting?
Okay, so very first thing that they will want to do is they'll want to go to the City of Burnsville website and get that white paper. That white paper is going to be probably the most important document for this, and it will be the most helpful thing for them. So they'll want to get that paper. The next thing that they'll want to do is they'll want to really look at it and have some ideas for 2 or 3 of the methods that they would be okay with in their city. Like, figure out what those are. Next thing to do is to make it bite-size. So a pilot program or a small subset or that type of thing, because with government, you want to do the first thing that's very small. Once the door is kicked open, you can ride that pony to the races all day long, but you got to kick open the door first. So make it bite-size. Don't make it a pain in the ass. And then they need to start asking for meetings, like one-on-one in-person meetings, not a mass email. God, don't do that. It's just, you wasted your time if you did that. One-on-one, face-to-face meetings, and find out who will champion this. And some of the ways to position it is it's groundbreaking, it's exciting, it will get our city noticed as being innovative, and it will make our city a better community for our residents. And it won't look bad on your reelection campaign. Like, I mean, flat out, those are conversations.
So just to build on that, I live in the county in North Carolina that contains the capital, Raleigh. So it seems like Raleigh is a big bite for that kind of thing. And that some of the smaller towns in the outer lying areas of the county might be a better place to start nibbling. Does that make sense?
It could be, or it could be that
or a trial version.
Yeah, you could try a subset in Raleigh. Like, is there anything in Raleigh that Raleigh is like super big about? Like in Minnesota, one of our cities, Red Wing, is all about the arts. Like that's their main thing. They're like super all about. Like in Burnsville, like we're super about parks.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're super about government. I mean, because it is the capital. Higher education as well, research. So yeah.
Okay, I would find some subset. I mean, you can do it in Raleigh, but you're going to find a subset of the city of how it could work, whether that's a department or whether that's a geographical location. And then use that as your bite-sized piece if you're in a large city. If you're in smaller towns, it's a little easier. Just keep in mind the budgetary amounts are going to be smaller, so be modest.
Well, okay, but this actually reminds me. I actually don't live in a town at all. So I live in an area between towns. At the county level, yeah, this is still a possibility. Okay, interesting. Yeah.
I'll tell you. So Minnesota Department of Transportation used participatory budgeting to do some of their transportation projects. So it can be any level of government. It really can.
All right. Well, I think that yes, right. I think that answers everything, and we're a little bit over time, and I don't want to take up too much of people's time. I definitely don't want to take up your time, Cara. I thank you for coming on the show. Any final words from you? And by the way, please make sure that you send us a link for the white papers, and I will post that in the show notes. That way people can take a good look and they can revise it for their own city. Maybe we'll even do it here in Jacksonville and see what we can come up with. But any final words?
I mean, my final say would be that we in the party, we need to start doing a better job of, like, we worry about trying to get people elected, which is great. And that's something we're very focused on, but we really need to up our game and start talking about what can we realistically do after people get elected. We have libertarians who are elected who are doing some amazing things across this country. We need to start compiling that information and sharing it so we can copy things from each other.
Right. Absolutely. And that is the point of the show, to try to highlight what's going on so that people can say, oh, that's a good idea. And then maybe utilize, like in this particular case, hey, there's a white paper. I don't have to write it up all myself. I can go and distill that down to what is necessary, what works in my particular community, for, however that ends up being. So, okay, well, I appreciate you being on, Cara. And then, folks, I'm going to go ahead and Susan, I'm going to go ahead and close this show out. So I'm going to kind of throw both of you off here. Unless you have any final words, let me know. But otherwise,
thanks. It's been great. Have fun.
And maybe we'll follow up in the future and maybe even ask you to come back on and talk a little bit more about some city council stuff, because I think those are some good things, like how to get elected, so on and so forth. So, there's maybe an opportunity there, because I would love to see, it would be great if there were just tons of people that were like, hey, I'm an elected city council member and I got a cool idea that I think everybody should hear about. So it's got to start with one, and then hopefully one turns into two, and so on and so forth. So, but thank you again for being on the show. And I'm going to go ahead and close us out for this episode. And let's see here. Folks, I want to thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Until next time, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com. You can find all the shows there. You can also connect with me at Liberty Dad at Facebook, Liberty Dad Pod on Twitter. If you want to even join that Hexscape, we'll call it that, or email me at libertydadpodcast@gmail.com, because I would love to hear from you. And if you happen to have anything that we need to discuss, whether it's a local affiliate or a state affiliate, please reach out at affiliates, plural, at Liberty Dad Podcast. Sorry, I said that totally wrong. Affiliates. You know what, folks? I'll put it in the show notes, because for whatever reason, I'm not on my game today. I think it's because I'm trying to get out of here and get back to my family. I'm going to go ahead and use that as an excuse for why I'm fumbling a little bit. But anyway, remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. I want to catch you next time, and we are out.